And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4, I think. Yeah, that was really high. Wow. Welcome to episode 4 of Tell Me More, my interview series about the industry with people in the industry. This week, we have no other than Mr. Ryan Shrout of PC Perspective. Say hello, Ryan.
How are you?
Really tired. It's only 7 o'clock in the evening, but I've had a really shitty few days, so I'm really tired now. And this grey hair probably would have come naturally if I had left it up to its own devices. So do you want to tell the people a little 30-second intro about yourself if they don't know who you are?
Sure. Ryan Shrout. I have run the website PC Perspective since 2004. And before that, we were known as AMDMB.com and AthlonMB.com and K7M.com. Basically, I've been reviewing PC hardware and doing PC hardware evaluations since late 1999. So wow. even though I'm only in my mid-30s, I think it puts me in the old man in the industry type classification for sure. But I spend most of my days writing content, developing testing methodologies, doing videos, that type of stuff. All centered around kind of PC gaming and PC enthusiast hardware.
And as of more recently, I've started seeing a fair bit more mobile content on the site.
Yeah, we do
in various stages, but yeah.
Yeah, it's I would say 4 years ago, it started to become very apparent to me that mobile wasn't just kind of like a big industry in terms of unit sales and that type of stuff, but it was important in terms of technology as well. So talking about what the different process technologies are, with the different processor designs, SoC designs, even down to handset reviews and tablet reviews and that type of stuff is very important. And there aren't a whole lot of people that really focus on some of the specific details that we're used to getting on PC hardware on the mobile space.
Which is actually why I started this series. So if you didn't know, the first episode, I had Josh on to speak about SoCs in specific, SoCs and CPUs, GPUs, and process tech, and how big it's been, especially in the last 3-4 years or so. Yep. It is really, especially GPUs, they've jumped forward so much. So actually, what you were just speaking about kind of goes on to my first question, which is you've been in the tech media for a fairly long time, like you said, since 1999-ish. So how for you has I don't want to say the media changed, but how has the type of media changed since smartphones kind of re-emerged? So I'd say iPhone onwards, because there have been smartphones before the
Sure.
iPhone. I owned a couple of them, a couple of Windows mobile PCs, some Palm Pilot, stuff like that. But I kind of say since the iPhone, where smartphones have re-emerged, the way the media has approached them has changed a fair amount. Would you agree? Or
yeah, I'd say it's dramatically so, right? I mean, and you gotta think that so much has changed regardless of the mobile space, but just how technical media and online media has changed since 2007. It's been a tremendous leap, right? So the positives and negatives of what have happened is that everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has had multiple smartphones. And so everybody can review smartphones. And the problem with that is that a lot of people don't have a lot of experience with a lot of different devices. So in terms of comparative testing or qualitative, comparisons, it's tough to do if you only have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 devices that you've gone through. Not to say that there's not value in that initial impressions, that an actual end user experience testing is very important. Well, I think what we saw with the mobile space is it took a little bit of time for mobile companies like Samsung or Apple or Qualcomm, or even go down to the device vendor side, LG, Motorola, those guys to recognize the value of reviews on kind of a wide scale. You've always saw, New York Times or Wall Street Journal or something like that would have a new iPhone story, right? But the more technical analysis, the kind of benchmark driven, user experience driven analysis of mobile testing is important to a significant number of people. Not a huge number of people, not like the majority of people for sure, not a whole lot of people go into Verizon and ask for a specific phone with what SoCs, what phones do you have based on Qualcomm SoCs? I imagine that's not a training step that any Verizon or AT&T employees have gone through.
And
but
having been in retail, majority of people don't know who Qualcomm is.
Yeah.
It's not a thing. And it's the same over here. People don't ask for the new Android phone. They don't ask for what processors are running. Like sometimes I'll ask how much storage it's got.
Right.
But a lot of the time it's what's the best phone, like in the general broad space, or what is the best iPhone, what's the best Samsung. So with the advent of again since 2007-ish, kind of tech YouTube, for lack of a better word, I think that's had a very large part to play. Especially again, last 5 years or so, technology YouTube has changed so much. We have people like MKBHD, we have you guys, we have Techno Buffalo, all these people have started putting very high quality content on YouTube that is so easy for everyone to access.
Right.
Maybe people don't want to read a 3,000 word phone review, but they'll sit down and watch a 5-minute video on it. And again, because everyone's got a phone, everyone can take their phone with them on the bus, I mean, they shouldn't watch it in their car, but whilst they're at work. Like, I mean, we've all got self-driving cars at this point, so it's fine.
I think it's an interesting thing. It's basically you're talking about a democratization of kind of content creation, right?
Yeah.
As easy as it has been to set up a website, right, and write content, it is becoming just as easy to create pretty good video content as well, right? Prosumer cameras you can get for $500. You can produce really high quality video. You can get really low cost editing software. YouTube makes releasing that content very simple and easy, and gives you kind of a potential of a large audience for it as well.
Then you have Twitter, like you can, if you've got your video on YouTube and then you have a link you can share to Twitter, and say you have 1,000 followers, those 1,000 followers can retweet it, and it's kind of like the echo effect. It just all these free platforms with such a wide reach can enable people like myself who started out when they were 13, 14, making terrible videos in their bedroom, writing terrible blogs on Blogger or WordPress, to actually make a living out of it, or somewhat of a living.
One thing I'm always curious on other people's opinions on this type of stuff is with that democratization of media, where how do people vet the people that they're getting opinions from, right? How do you determine that this is the person I'm going to listen to? This is the person's opinion that I value. What background, what experience do they have? That's something that we kind of struggle with on our side, is because I feel like a lot of the content we produce is very unique and in depth in a way that a lot of other people's stuff isn't. But what is the value in that to the 4-minute video watcher on YouTube versus the smaller audience that is actually interested in the kind of technical detail that we often go into?
I think a lot of the time it depends on the device itself. So say this, I just got the OnePlus X into review. There are a ton of OnePlus X reviews on YouTube. A device that I recently just posted a review of is the BQ Aquaris X5. Now, most people don't know who the hell the company BQ is. You might know of them because they release an Ubuntu tablet. But most people don't know who the hell they are. So finding a review of the Aquaris X5, finding a video review of it in English, it sounds silly, but there might only be 5 YouTube videos in English about the X5 that isn't a hands-on video. So sometimes I don't think there is all that much choice, despite the democratization of the platforms. But on bigger devices like the Galaxy S7s, the iPhone 6Ss, I think people build brand alliances more than they do with devices themselves, but also with content providers. So you see people that will only read The Verge reviews, or They won't.
Yeah.
They only factor in NKBHD's opinion, or if it's a SSD, they'll only have Alan's opinion. If it's like there are like people build alliances to certain people or certain sites or now certain video creators.
Yeah.
And I think it all depends on the product they're trying to find information about at the end of the day.
I do worry that I think you're actually correct in terms of like the idea of the alliance, but it's interesting to maybe have people question whether or not that's a healthy thing to do, right? Is it
almost entirely not?
Yeah.
I can already tell you that as someone who's like studied psychology a lot. I can already tell you it's not a great thing. It depends if you're the person that's getting the alliance, I guess. But for the industry as a whole, I think there needs to be kind of more of a level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And when a new technology comes in that is groundbreaking, like YouTube was, like Twitter was, there is an even playing field for a while, and then a couple of people like shoot up, and it's like, well, it's not so level anymore. And it's kind of upsetting that like you find a YouTuber that creates a new channel for whatever reason, and overnight it gets 10,000 subscribers, whereas you've been trying to build a channel for years, and it's like, oh, I just hit 1,000, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Yep. There's a lot of mystery that goes into all of that, right? And
it's
trust me, I'm trying to figure it out as much as anybody else. So,
well, you seem to be doing pretty well for yourself. At least you're putting on the allure of that. So, one of the next questions is PC Purse changed quite a lot recently. One of the things I'd like to speak about is the introduction of a Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the more direct funding, crowdfunding type method, as well as sponsorships, as well as advertisements. Do you feel this is kind of the only way to do it if you're of like a certain size now? Because before something like Patreon, like you reach a certain size and you can't reach any bigger, someone buys you and that's how you get bigger.
Right.
Or you do a really, really big brand deal somehow, and that sustains you for like another 6 months if you're lucky, something like that. So do you think that without a Patreon type style of because it's kind of a subscription but not really,
it's kind of like that. I would say it's that whole funding mentality is interesting, right? It was for me, it's much more of an experiment than anything else. If we had to depend on that solely, we wouldn't be able to exist, right? Yeah. If it were just me by myself, creating the content, doing all the writing, doing all the video work, then maybe that would be enough. But it's just not it just didn't turn out to be enough to be, oh, we're going to get rid of advertising altogether because we have so much support from this reader base. And, some of that is still the vast majority of kind of this enthusiast crowd, believes they should get this content for free. They've been used to getting it for free for 20 years. Why would anything change? And that's why we didn't put anything behind a paywall. We didn't, decide to put any kind of the content that we had been creating for free is still free. It's an interesting balance. I would love to have gone that route completely, right? If it were possible for us to not have advertising and then not have, those specific people complain or have concerns over, Asus advertises with you, so are you more biased towards their devices or NVIDIA or AMD or Logitech, wherever it happens to be. But the Patreon direct funding thing is more of a, let's see what we can get from this. What is our audience willing to do? And for different people, it's going to do different stuff, right? Some Patreons are very successful, and if they're really small operations, 1 or 2 people, they're not worried about maintaining a website. They're not worried about anything except YouTube distribution, which is free. Then it's very possible that you could get away with that exclusively. But if you're The Verge, if you're Polygon, if you're GameSpot, it's really hard to be able to fund everything through that audience.
I think in another way, we're also seeing kind of the breakdown of those kind of like MCNs that God, I've forgotten what MCN even stands for at this point. I'm so tired. But things like Revision 3,
right.
Machinima, things like that, they kind of I mean, I know they still exist, but specifically like Revision 3 kind of broke down upon itself. And you have people like Patrick Norton and Snubs doing tech thing on a Patreon. And they seem to be doing, again, very well for themselves. But again, they're kind of the exception to the rule, sadly. But like I said, two, 3 people mainly doing videos. Some of it goes to YouTube. They also do an RSS and stuff like that. But when you're trying to do an entire team, and especially when you make the content that you guys like make, and you guys also make a lot of your testing stuff, from what I understand.
Right.
That and that's money.
Yeah, that was the kind of the point I tried to get across to people in that original Patreon video, is that, the testing methodologies that we build or that we do are longer form. They take a lot more time to develop and process. And then, when we do a video card review, we're spending multiple days testing a single part, and we've got to do multiple parts and multiple resolutions for each one, and we're doing different types of analysis. And we're still trying to judge like what people's value is in that type of stuff, right? Whether it be in a mobile space versus PC enthusiast DIY space, right? How much more value do we present to a user if we go into an extremely detailed analysis and a performance breakdown of the new Qualcomm SoC versus if we post some pictures of the outside of it? Here's what the photos look like, here's what the video looks like, and it runs pretty fast, we guess, right? So one of those you can do in an afternoon, and one of those will take a week of a person dedicated to that single task, right? And
also
obviously
takes them away from other things
that
they could be doing.
Right. So if I'm paying Sebastian to do a review of the Asus Zenfone, and it's a whole week project, versus you can get that done in one day and we can get 3 other things done this week. It's a real dilemma that we face, and I try my best to keep us to the edge of more in-depth, focus on that, differentiate that way, and hope that the audience comes along with us, that the audience recognizes the value in that, instead of just kind of some of the more generalized content that's out there.
But like I said, I 100% agree with the way you do your testing. Like I said, the really in-depth power analysis. So from what I understand, you actually don't, like, we'll go to graphics cards. You don't just read it directly out of the PCIe bus. You have a special way of reading the power.
Right. So in terms of like graphics card power, the vast majority of people out there are testing power at the wall, right? And there's plenty of devices that are built out there that do that. The one we have in our office is called Watts Up, WATTS Up.
The ones like the kilowatt and stuff like that. They're all they're essentially a screen that you plug the main computer into in between the wall, and it tells you a number.
Yep. And it gives you a number, but that number includes your processor, your motherboards, your storage, your graphics card, anything that's inside that PC. So what we use now is it's kind of like a PCI bridge device that Alan did some magic on and was able to tap into the 12 volt, the 3.3 volt out of that. We put it into a DAC, a data acquisition device that we have that reads at 1,000 times a second. And then we intercept the same voltages from the PCI Express connectors, right? The actual power plug into the top of the system. So when we do that, we get a measurement of power of only the graphics card, right? And then we can do really cool things with that, right? We can compare game to game. We can compare the game versus frame rate or versus the scene that's going on in the system, right? And you can see some interesting things about, oh, these 2 graphics cards are in these 2 positions, but when we switch scenes, they actually flip, right? The AMD is actually drawing less power than the NVIDIA in this particular case, right? We can see a lot of interesting stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see.
And again, that takes time, that takes money. Alan didn't make that in an afternoon. Well, I mean, no. I think not, as smart as he may be. I don't think he made that in an afternoon. And the same with, I apparently can't speak this afternoon. The latency percentile stuff on the new SSD reviews. It's not something that happens like that. It takes time, and you have to pay him for that time. Strangely enough, things that take more time cost more money. Who knew?
He's been working on that for on that storage side of stuff for a very long time, and every time we've put out an article in recent months that uses it, it's actually being iterated on many times in the background in that case too. So it would have been really simple to release that review today with some HD TAC and ASSSD numbers only, and gone about our business. But the hope is that people see value in the additional data and work that goes into some of that stuff.
I mean, even if I don't understand all of it, which I don't all the time, I'm not going to lie to you. It is enlightening to know that somebody is going the extra mile. And also, it's nice to see an SSD that actually fills up the entire case once in a while,
right?
Rather than being all about this big.
That's true.
So it is a 750 gig, so it should have some space on it. So, God, notes are apparently useless. PC and mobile landscape. Some companies, specifically Microsoft and Canonical with Ubuntu, are trying to merge them quite ferociously. Microsoft has Continuum with Windows 10 and Windows 10 Mobile. So there's the little display dock that does DisplayPort, HDMI, USB, Ethernet, all that lot. And obviously Ubuntu has what they call Convergence, which is pretty much the same thing. I think Ubuntu has been in development for a little bit longer and is therefore a little bit more refined. But Microsoft came to the public first, strangely enough. That always seems to happen with Ubuntu. Do you think that this type of, or this style of computing is going to become more important over time? Do you think people won't own laptops anymore? They'll just own this phone that can double, but they might still have a big PC, or maybe the other way around? Or do you think there is genuinely, after about 3 years, this is a fad that's going to die and will just stay phones are phones and computers are computers?
I struggle with this a lot, right? Because everybody says that the PC market is dying, the DIY market is shrinking. And I think it's pretty clear that it is shrinking. Not as dramatically as some people had expected. And I think what you'll see is a lot of people who were Xbox 360, PS3 fans found the inherent value of the upgradability and the performance you got out of PC gaming and went down that road. If we look at, I don't know, if you look at Motorola's announcement recently, they talked about the Moto Z, right? That just came out, or was just announced. And one of their, and one of their, one of their experiences or one of their accessories rather for their device is something that you attach to the back of it, and then you can dock it to a PC and it, attach it to a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. And this is not the first time we've seen any of that type of stuff. The issue I see there is that there will always be a significant delta between the performance of the fastest phone and the performance of the fastest PC. And even though mobile phones are getting significantly faster over time, I don't feel like they're closing the gap. Really.
Oh no, there's this thing called physics that is a real issue to get. There's that thing that runs at sub 1 watt in your pocket, and that thing that can consume 95 watts that needs a fan and a heatsink, or if you're fancy, a liquid cooler. There is you physically cannot physics. You cannot overcome the fact that it produces heat. You want it to go faster, it's likely going to produce more heat in that, and it's a very small space. It has to go somewhere.
Right.
People bitched and moaned when the Snapdragon 810 ran at a higher thermal envelope than what they were used to.
Right. It's definitely. I don't see it as a convergence. I don't see it as something where one device is going to fix everything for everybody. I think a lot of people thought that was going to be the iPad. And if anything, the iPad sales have kind of stalled out.
I think the number they did at their earnings was for roughly half the life of the iPad, its sales have been dropping.
Yeah.
So the iPad is roughly 5-ish years old, and for about 2.5 years, the sales have been falling, 9 quarters or something like that.
And that's easily the most successful tablet device that has ever been built.
Shadow of a doubt.
Right. And I think when you first saw people saying this is good enough productivity for me, I think I bet if you check with those people that said that in year 2, year 3 of the iPad, they will have reverted back to Intel-based, Core-based notebooks that have significantly better performance. Maybe you have convertibles now where you can flip it around and make it a giant iPad if you want.
I use a Chromebook. It's based on an ARM processor, but I think the big boon for me is the keyboard and mouse more than anything else.
Yeah. And
there are some things that there are some input devices you can't replace yet. Then there's not been anything good enough to make me want to replace a trackpad or a keyboard and a mouse.
No, a keyboard is probably an irreplaceable device because I don't want to ever live in a world where I'm sitting on an airplane and everybody's trying to do voice dictation at the same time. God. Even if it were 100% accurate, until you get something that's just actually reading your thoughts silently, then I think keyboard is maybe our quietest form of input, if nothing else.
Unless you have like a GT80 on an airplane with the
that's true.
Keyboard.
That's a different. And
if that's true, you're the worst person in the world for a complete reason. Also, speaking of the reading the thoughts silently, I welcome our robot overlords. But no, like I said, sometimes keyboards can be annoying, and there's always that asshole that is like bottoming out the keys. Most of the time, that's me. But there's a reason the keyboard has stuck around for as long as it has. There's a reason that we evolved to relatively large size trackpads on laptops. Is because they're incredibly useful and they're better than what we've had before. Moving to a touchscreen for everything is not better. No. Unless you can have a touchscreen that morphs to fake give you a keyboard. So there are ridges, where there were prototypes for CES a couple of years ago, but everything prototypes at CES. Nothing is good. Again, nothing is good enough to leave. What I found with this Chromebook is even though Chrome OS has its limits, and even though the ARM processor inside has its limits, the fact that I can get 10 hours out of it, the fact that it is literally silent, the fact that it doesn't get hot,
right,
are worth the trade-offs for me. The way I work, the way I do either my work or my writing or video stuff, I can get done on Chrome OS most of the time. But I understand that's not for everyone. You guys wouldn't be able to do what you guys do on something like that. But you wouldn't be able to do it on a tablet either. I mean, you might be able to do it on a Windows tablet, but that'd be really struggling. So a lot of the time it's use case, but I don't think, like you said, many people that said I can move to a tablet like 2 or 3 years ago are still on a tablet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think the convergence, I think it will occur at some point, but it is not in the immediate future that many people expected it to be.
So next is kind of a weird future-y type question. So is there anything in technology or media or anything at the moment that you like really, really dislike and you wish you could change? More specifically in like the mobile end of things, because that's obviously where I am and the site is, but it can be computing in general. Is there anything like you specifically really dislike and want to change? I know where I'd go, but I'd want to.
I would like to see I would like to see a return of impressive, interesting performance metrics that aren't based on single standardized benchmarks. So the whole debate of Antutu as a benchmark, right, and how it can be gamed by certain mobile SoC vendors and handset vendors, I think that is probably something that needs to be addressed so we get useful and deterministic and easily comparable results. And I think a lot of that will mean we have to shift what our workloads are to actual consumer-based workloads, right? So let's measure what an experience-based change is from device to device, as opposed to this number is 8% higher than the other number. If it doesn't result in an improved game or an improved app switching experience or an improved browsing experience or improved speed performance, then what is the value of it? So I'd like to see more user testing type performance analysis as opposed to single application benchmark performance.
Which is actually what we saw happen in the desktop space about a decade-ish or so ago. Whereas it was we ran a benchmark, we got a number, and it's like now we're seeing benchmarks that do simulate real-world use. So they'll cycle through websites, but instead of just letting the site load and then do the next one, they'll scroll. Maybe they'll click on a link, wait for it to load. Like it's what people do on. So yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. For me, I'd want to see more mobile SoC vendors. So as you know, we pretty much have Qualcomm and Samsung. Qualcomm, Samsung, and MediaTek, really. Qualcomm, obviously, one of the biggest. MediaTek, absolutely huge, but licenses ARM architecture. And then we have Samsung, which is kind of a mix of both. They're stepping their foot in with core design, but they still use mostly stock ARM stuff. Really, I can't wait until AMD put out, is it K12 or something like that, which was their custom ARM core, just to kind of shake things up, because we had NVIDIA with Denver, and that kind of fell flat on its face, sadly. It was technically interesting, but it had nothing to back it up. The software never really made it in the same way that NVIDIA would have hoped. And now we're seeing NVIDIA kind of back out slightly of the super low power market. They're still, I think they're still said they're doing the Shield stuff, but like the Shield TV has a fan. It's able to be actively cooled because it's a bigger device. It's not in your pocket.
Right.
So for me, I'd kind of just want more diversity in the mobile SoC market, because I don't want it to get boring. If everyone's using the standard ARM designs, I don't want 8 A53s in the same GPU. like it's I don't want it to become the desktop space, which is pretty much Intel.
Right.
AMD kind of makes some stuff.
Yep, you're right.
Like I own AMD stuff, I own NVIDIA stuff, and Intel stuff, and it's just like, well, AMD hasn't been relevant for the past half decade or more, in the CPU side at least.
Right.
And hopefully Zen does something. Again, as someone who's not tested it, I can't say jack shit, but I really hope Zen is something. So lastly, this is kind of the simplest question of all. What is your current setup? So phone, watch, tablet, laptop, all that lot.
Let's see. I use an iPhone 6S. I have a Pebble Time watch. Yeah. Yep. I wear Fitbit on the other wrist.
Nice.
Let's see. I got neither mine, hence the need for one. I have a Dell XPS 13 is my primary laptop. It's the only PC I use at home now since moving to the office space stuff, kind of trying to keep separation of work and home life. And then I probably can't even tell you the specs of the main PC I use here at the office, because I'm at different machines pretty much every hour of every day as I move between CPU test beds and GPU test beds.
I think suddenly everyone that listens to this interview suddenly hates you. So many computers, you can't quite know the specs of each.
And if I wanted to have the best computer, I would use the best computer.
You literally could.
Yeah.
You could have like quad 1080s, a 6950X. Like you have those.
I do.
Come back. You could make the best PC.
The streaming machine that we're on right now, the one that handles all of our video recording and stuff and is powering this Google Hangouts, is a 20-core, 40-thread Xeon system with, an 800 terabyte PCIe SSD in it. So a little bit overkill for probably what Google Hangouts needs.
I don't know. Hangouts is a piece of shit. It can.
Yeah.
Hangouts is like Xbox Live. Xbox Live will take as much bandwidth as you can throw at it. So like Hangouts will take like 40 threads if you give it 40 threads.
Well, then it's doing it if that's what it is. So that's where it's at. And it's nice to have the extra power from when we do other things as well.
Well, like I said, thank you very much for agreeing to do this today. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry we had all the technical issues earlier on.
No, it's fine.
And again, hopefully this was short enough that I didn't keep you for too long.
No, it's good. It was fun. It was a good time. I think all the audio issues were on our side anyway, so whatever. It all got worked out.
Woo! I will still take the blame because you thought we were using Skype, and I thought I told you about Hangouts. So, like, yeah, why not? My fault. So I am at mobile_dom. Ryan, you are at Ryan Shrout on Twitter.
Yep, pretty simple.
Cool. The site is at mttfeed, and you are at PCPer. www.pcper.com, www.mobiletechtalk.co.uk. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for all the downloaders, whatever. And see you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Stop broadcasting.